Hi everyone, thank you for joining us for today's iFactoryEd webinar. This is the final webinar in our Drupal series, and today we'll be focusing on organizing content for multiple audiences. I am Lori Loturco. I'm the marketing manager at iFactory and the organizer of this webinar. So for those of you who are joining us for the first time and might not be familiar with who we are and what we do, we are a Boston-based interactive design and development company with over 20 years experience. We're a division of RDW Group, which is a full-service communications agency based in Rhode Island. And with higher ed being one of our core verticals, we work with schools of all shapes and sizes across the country to really discover the best and most unique web and mobile solutions for each of those organizations that we partner with. And we have an incredible team of experts who offer everything from discovery and usability testing through to information architecture, design, and development. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about who we are and what we do and the clients that we work with, I invite you to explore our website. You can check out our blog, and likewise follow us across the following social media networks that you see here, because it's through these platforms that you can also learn about upcoming iFactoryEd webinars as well as other iFactory news and industry news. So today's presentation should be roughly 30 minutes in length, after which I'll lead us through a Q&A session so we can just respond to any questions that you might have throughout the duration of the webinar. And that said, you can go ahead and use the entry box on the GoToWebinar interface to send us any of those questions as you think of them. And likewise, use that same means to let us know if you have any audio or visual issues. So that said, let's take a look at today's webinar. Some of the focus points and what you'll be learning will include configuring options for audience selectors, implementing different designs to distinguish areas of the site for each audience, and using the field permissions module to deliver fine-grained customization of content delivery. Leading today's webinar is Lisa Sawin, and Lisa is our solutions architect here at iFactory. So right now I am going to go ahead and turn it over to Lisa. Lisa, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Great.
And we're looking at your screen.
Great. So pretty much every higher ed website is facing the same challenge. There are just a wide number of types of users who need to be accounted for with the website content. There can be undergraduates, graduates, students, faculty and staff, and then even going out to having alumni, prospective students, parents. Each of these different audiences has different needs, and it can be very beneficial when planning your website to think of them as separate user groups and try to find ways to accommodate them. There are, I'm sorry, there we go. You can target different user types in a lot of different ways. Today we're going to talk about using special gateways for different user types, so they have their own landing page on the site which accumulates the information for them that's most pertinent. We're also going to talk about altering the content of the site so that throughout the site there's content that's really targeted to a particular type of user. And also you talk about using design to set off an area of the site to make it more, make it a little easier for people to know that they're in a special section of the site. There are a lot of different ways to handle it. It's one of those topics that there's no right answer. There's just a lot of different possibilities. And one of my goals today is just to get you thinking about your users on your site and the different ways that it might be beneficial to them to have the site tailored for their needs. And we're also going to focus on Drupal as a content management system that has a lot of tools to build all of these ideas. Drupal is by no means the only content management system that can deliver this functionality. There's a lot of different ways to do it in various CMSs in functionality through its ecosphere of modules, as well as a very easy way to make lightweight code changes that extend Drupal's functionality to be particularly configured for your site. So let's just dive right into audience gateways. Audience gateways is one of the most common ways we see websites targeted for specific audiences. In a gateway, what we're doing is grouping content for a specific audience. So this might be a landing page for staff. Throughout the site that are of particular interest to the staff member, or it might be for admission, for students who are prospective and you're trying to sort of focus them on the admissions pathways. That might have more of a marketing focus. Instead of a lot of interior links, you might want to have more marketing focused copy and images and videos. So one of the things we can do when we have an audience gateway is to style that content so that it sets it apart from the other areas of the site. That allows a user to know they're on a special page that pertains just to them. And then, of course, we want to present content that's specific to that user type. We just implemented audience gateways on the Northeastern University Library site. This is a gateway for the graduate students. There's a whole set of gateways that you can see in the left-hand column. This particular gateway, for the treatment of this site, we didn't use a different look and feel. We set up a different page as a gateway for each of quite a large number of user types to maintain a specific set of content for each of the user types. It can almost become like a landing page or a home page for that user type within your website. So once you set up having gateways for each type of user, you need to lead the audience member to get to that gateway. You've got to help graduate students know that there is a gateway page that's just for them. Once again, as always, there's a lot of different ways to do it. Today we're going to focus on starting from a menu. So the first step we're going to need to do is create a menu that has every gateway page is accounted for in the menu. Now I'm showing a screenshot from what at iFactory we call our wireframe site. This is a site that we maintain and use for all kinds of proof of concepts, testing out of ideas. We just use it as a sandbox for playing around with Drupal. And I definitely recommend anybody who has access to a Drupal site sets up a sandbox for their own use. There's just so much that you can do with Drupal, and getting to play with ideas outside of the production site can be really beneficial. And it can be as simple as running that sandbox on your own machine. It doesn't have to be up on a web server. It can just be a simple installation of Drupal on your own machine, which is actually what we'll be using today. So this is the gateways menu structure. And as you can see, it's listing 3 links for the undergraduate gateway page, the graduate student gateway page, and the faculty gateway page. And we're going to use that as our sample to explore some ideas for how to present those gateway choices. The first option is just really simple. It's just a list of links in a block. This might look like the sketch I'm putting up right now. If you look in the right-hand corner, there's the traditional I am a phrase that has a list of the links below it. This is a sketch that we're working on for a site that's in progress right now. This is just the simplest way to present to a user the opportunity to select which gateway page they should be headed towards. It's just a list of links. In Drupal, we create that with a menu block. Let's take a look at what that looks like. This is the blocks page for a Drupal installation, the wireframes one that's running on my local machine. And if we look down in the content area, we'll see that there's a menu block that is based off of the gateways menu. And if we go back to the site running on my machine, you'll see that that menu block is what's represented in the center of the page, a simple list of links that directs a user to select what type of user they are. The next, another option that you can think about to present audience gateway selectors is a jump menu. We have one of those running in the Northeastern University Library site, which I have in my other browser. If we head to the home page of the Northeastern University Library, the jump menu is over here on the right-hand side. That's the I am a drop-down. If I were to select that, I could choose to go to the graduate student gateway page. This is built using the Drupal jump menu module. What it does is take any menu and turn it into a select element like this. We like to tweak it a little bit. I don't feel like it gives the best user experience all by itself. This was the default implementation, then the IMA label would be over to the left, and there'd be a go button over to the right. So the user takes up more room, and also the user has to do 2 steps of making their selection and then hitting go. So what we like to do at iFactory is change it a little bit. We add some JavaScript to the theme. There's 2 little pieces of JavaScript that are relevant here. In line 8, we have the JavaScript that adds the IMA option. And in line 12, we have the JavaScript that sends the user to their correct page. So the main takeaway from this page is that it's just a very small amount of JavaScript that makes the jump module better. And I think this is a really good example of the fact that there's a tremendous number of modules in the Drupal universe, and sometimes the module just as it stands is perfect for you. Sometimes you can build off it with a custom module, and sometimes you can tweak it just in your theme. There's a lot of different ways to go. So in addition to the simple list of links in the jump menu, there's another option for presenting the gateway selectors, and this is something that we saw recently while we were doing some explorations for a site we're working on. It was something that my information architect found and brought to my attention, asked about doing in Drupal. We saw it on the Bentley University site, and actually let's go to this in a running browser. This is the Bentley site. This is not a site that we did, but we really liked this idea. So the gateway menu, they hide up here in a sliding block. So it doesn't take very much room. You can pull it down and look at it, put back if it is getting in your way. The other really nice feature about this is, in addition to selecting the type of user you are and getting to go to your gateway page, it actually remembers it. It's putting a cookie on your browser and remembers what types of user you are and uses that to target content throughout the site. That's something we're going to talk about a little bit later. We have a proof of concept here at iFactory for something, a slightly different way we want to handle that treatment. But this is really an awesome method. So what we did to make that work at iFactory, let's go look at it in the wireframe site. It looks a lot less pretty than in a design site, but it's just to show that the idea works. So we have a little bit of a selector here that opens and closes the sliding panel. The way that's put together in Drupal is going back to the blocks listing page, we make another another menu block menu based on the gateways menu. And instead of putting it right in the page content, we put it in this new region called the hiding header. Drupal makes it very easy to add regions to the page. The hiding header is a region that's set to be right at the top of the page. And if we go back to our JavaScript, we'll see that the very last chunk of JavaScript starting in line 23, that's the JavaScript that's there to handle showing and hiding that panel. Of course, on a running site, you would theme that so that it had a much nicer looking presentation. And you could also, one of the nice things about that is you set it up as a Drupal region. It means you could put really any blocks you wanted in that. On the Bentley site, they have a little bit of an explanation of what's happening. You could put explanations, you could put calls to action. There's a lot you can do once you get that sliding panel in place. And the audience gateway links is a great thing to put in that block. So we've covered a few different ways of getting the audience to their gateway page. One thing I'd like to also discuss is what we can do with the gateway page to set it off a little bit. And this is something that I haven't seen used too much. So my examples are going to focus on altering the look and feel based on sections of the site, but it's something that could absolutely be implemented to set off the look and feel of a gateway page as well. So let's look at the Northeastern University Library site. This is a typical page on the site. It's got the layout that's used throughout most of the site with a white header and that goes right directly to the red menu bar. For 2 areas of the site, it's styled a little bit differently. For the archives and special collections area, as well as for the digital media design studio. These were 2 different sections of the site that it was determined would benefit from having their own look and feel. The archives and special collections section has a solid red header instead of a white header, and it has a colorful banner, an image banner underneath. The digital media design studio has a very similar treatment, but with a different image banner. The benefit of having just a very slight difference in the look and feel is that the user is really anchored to the experience of being in that section. So as you drill down in subsidiary pages within this section, it retains the special header. And I can see that being very helpful as well if you had a section of the site devoted to a particular user type. To set it off using design can be a really effective way of grounding the user so they know when they're in their own special area. So the easiest way to handle that is to set up a section based on the menu tree. So for example, if your alumni section always falls under highered.edu/alumni, and then all the pages within that section retain that alumni beginning to their URL, it's pretty easy to set up a body class so that every page in the section knows that they're in that section. One of the themes that we use a lot here at iFactory is the Zen theme. We very often will create sub-themes from the Zen theme because it's very flexible and allows our designers to really have a lot of control over the look and feel. And Zen has automatic placement of a class in the body that allows you to determine what section you're in. So you could very easily highlight a look and feel for an alumni section. If you are using any other theme, the code that the Zen theme uses is actually very portable. So you could download the Zen theme and look in its template file, grab that little snippet of PHP and put it in your own template file, and it will add that body class for you. So that works very well for setting up a simple section, one that's based entirely on the menu tree, so that all the pages in your section fall under the same top-level URL. Drupal gives you a lot of power via the context module to set up a much more complex section. And I want to take a look at the context module with you. This is a context that's active on the wireframe site. And contexts have two parts. It's very familiar to programmers and less so to everybody else in the world. But the general idea is that there's a condition and a reaction. And you can think of it as an if and then a then. So the conditions are all the things that have to be true. If they're not true, then the reactions are ignored. But if the conditions are true, then the reactions will happen. So if we want to establish a section on the site, as long as you can sort of articulate what the section on the site is, if you can say, well, the alumni section is all the pages that start with the word alumni, or the events section is all the pages that are type events, plus these particular listing pages. If you can sort of say in English to describe what the conditions are that generate the section of the site, there's a pretty good chance that the context module can make that happen for you. Now I have the context module set up to only look at the path, but you can see from this conditions dropdown that there's actually a very wide variety of conditions that you can use. It's everything from the type of content you're looking at to taxonomy terms that might be in use on a particular page, to the path, of course, to the user role of a user who's viewing a page. So you could do something like if a user were logged in as a faculty member and a page were tagged with a research term, that you could use that to establish a section of the site for faculty pertaining to research. So you can see that you can actually get very complex with how you set up the sections of the site. Then the piece that you need to apply to theming is to add a theme HTML reaction, and this will stick a body class onto the page. For every page that satisfies the rules in the conditions section, we'll get a special class from the reactions section. And that allows you to apply a different look and feel just to those pages. I also would like to talk about altering the content. And this is a very powerful area to tailor the site for a specific audience. There's a lot of different directions you can go with this. Let's talk first about one of the directions we implemented for a site recently. Yes, I have it as a screenshot. The field permissions module. Well, let me show it to you first, actually. I think it'll make more sense when I show it, and then I can explain to you how we did it. This is this library staff directory for the Northeastern University library site. This is the page that the public sees. It has, each library staff member has a bunch of different fields. They have an image, they have a name, they have a title, they have a department, a phone number, and an email address. There are a few other fields, but those are the main ones that every staff member has. And let's take a look at where that is set up in the Drupal site. This is a local copy of the Northeastern University Library site. And you can see that the users have all of the fields that we discussed. They have name, department, title, phone. They also have this field called library cell phone. Now, if we go back to the screenshot, none of these users have a library cell phone field show up. There doesn't appear to be any library cell phone fields. Well, that's because the library cell phone is actually private content. I'm going to show you in a minute. I set up some dummy library cell phones, so I didn't give away any secrets. But the library cell phone is used only internally. We wouldn't want the public to have access to that number. When a logged-in user visits the same page, now they get a very nice presentation, the same presentation, that just includes the library cell phone. And this ability to very finely target content to a specific user type can be very powerful. And it can allow you to not set up lots of different areas that you have to keep track of with content for this type of user and content for that type of user, but keep it all in one place. So there's one area where it has to be maintained, one place you go to look at it, and whichever user type you are, you will get the information that's appropriate for you. The way that we set that up in Drupal is the field permissions module. It takes a field and applies permissions to it. So let's look at the library cell phone field. When we edit that field in Drupal, we're going to get a whole bunch of options. This is all normal looking. But what is different is this section down here, the field visibility and permissions section. If we didn't have the field permissions module enabled, then we wouldn't have this matrix of choices. The permissions are, you can do pretty complex levels of permissions here, but the main idea is the view anyone's value for a field. If we were to change this to anonymous user, then the library cell phone would show up for all users instead of just for authenticated users. So the field permissions module is the tool that allows us to target and display specific fields for specific user roles. To have sort of a higher or a larger amount, maybe a control over larger chunks of content, we need to use the context module. This was the module that allowed us to style sections of the site based on rules. Now we're going to use it to place blocks on the site based on certain rules. So let's go over to the Drupal site and take a look at that alumni context again. Just like before, we can set up a complex set of conditions that will allow us to place, to set up a section of the site for particular rules that we'd like to be followed. And this time, instead of focusing on theming, we're going to focus on placing blocks. Now this is one of the interfaces in Drupal that I find requires the most training. This is a very confusing user interface, and people find it hard to get used to. But it is also, I guess that kind of goes hand in hand, it's very powerful. It gives you a lot of control over exactly where you want to place blocks on the site. So once you establish something like an alumni section of the site, you can use, this is a list of every single block that you have available to you, and this is a list of all the regions that you have available to you. So you can select a particular block to appear in a certain region. The context module is what allows you to place blocks based on a section of the site. And the last method of altering content I would like to discuss is something that goes back to what we saw on the Bentley site, and it's an idea that we've really been bouncing around a lot here at iFactory. We call it the AI bar for artificial intelligence, and the idea is that as a user moves around your site, we're accumulating information about them. We know as they click on different pages, the track of pages that they've visited. And this is great information. The business world is much more ahead of higher ed in making use of that to target, in the business case, advertisements to particular users. It's something that I think it makes a lot of sense in a higher ed environment to think about gathering information about a prospective student as they click on, as they perhaps click on a combination like viewing admissions events and financial aid explanations. We may want to put a call to action with regard to financial aid, even as they are in other areas of the site. We know they're interested in it, so let's see if we can grab their attention to give them some more information to make it more understandable. So the way the idea here is to set up some conditions and then react on those conditions. Unfortunately, the context module doesn't have that set up out of the box, but the context module has a great system of hooks that allow us to extend it. We can set up our own custom conditions and our own custom reactions that will extend the way context works out of the box. Let's take a look at that. If we go, this is another context that I set up for the webinar called prospective students. And in this context, our condition is a special one. It's called visited admissions page. Now, when I showed you this dropdown before, anybody who was familiar with the context module would have seen this condition here and recognized it as something that's not on the typical list. Everything else on the list comes out of the box with the context module. But that particular context is unique to this installation because it's an extension for the context module that we just wrote. Once that admissions page context is set, it means that this context will fire whenever a user has already visited the admissions page. And the reactions that we're allowing for when the user has visited the admissions page is a standard reaction, which is to display a block. So when you visited the admissions page, we'll give you a list of links for prospective students. So let's take a look at that running in the browser. We've already visited this page, and it does not have a list of links for prospective students. It just has the slide and panel, the jump menu, and the menu block that we saw before. But if we were to go and visit the alumni page and wait for it to load, now we'll see that if we go back to the home page, oops, it didn't work. That's really embarrassing. Okay, well, the proof of concept worked a few minutes ago, but the idea is that if we go back to the home page after having visited the alum page, it puts a cookie on the browser so that when we revisit the home page, it will show this list of links for prospective students. So that's what I wanted to cover in this webinar. I'm trying to give you a big overview of the whole range of options that you have for targeting content for your users. It's a really great direction to brainstorm on, to think about your users and what the best way to meet their needs are. There's just tremendous ways of handling it, and I encourage you to go look at some award-winning higher ed websites and find ideas and try to implement them on your site. There's ideas out there that are definitely worth learning from. And the terrific thing about Drupal is it has tools to really build almost anything that you can think of.
Okay, Lisa, thank you so much. We have a couple questions that trickled through during the webinar. So let's start with, how do you decide what content belongs on a particular gateway page?
Yeah, and there's really two ways to go about that. I think brainstorming is really important, and I really do think you know your users and can come up with great ideas just by thinking about what their needs are. But then the most important step after that is testing. Anytime you have an idea like setting up a gateway page for a particular user type, that is a great concept to subject to usability testing. There's some terrific resources out there about doing usability testing yourself, some protocols you can follow and ways to go about it. And of course, it's also something at iFactory, we do a lot of usability testing here, something we believe very deeply in.
Okay, great. And another question here is around the context module. It says, we use the context module, but have a hard time keeping track of which context is affecting each page. Do you have any tips to help manage this?
Yeah, that's a big problem. In the context module, it's really a mixed bag because it's a great module. It really gives us a lot of power, but the user interface definitely is not as user-friendly as I would like to see. So the first thing I want to say is a lot of times I see that when people set up contexts, they don't make use of the description field or the tags. So you can see here I have made use of the description field. I've described each context that I've created, but I haven't made use of the tags. The tags are a good way to group your contexts together. If you tag your contest, they will be clumped together on this context listing page. And another really helpful tool for dealing with your context is using the development blocks. This is the context module kind of comes out of the box with a few different blocks that are available for debugging. If we enable this context and then go in and take a look at it, we'll see that there are some blocks we put on the page. The context inspector and the context editor. You need to have the develop module to get these. That's the very helpful development module that gives you a lot of high-powered help. It's only available to users who have the privilege to access it. So it's not the kind of thing that you want to make available to anonymous users. But with that develop module, if we go to the home page of this site, we'll see that we have the home page of the site for a user who's not logged in is very different than the home page of the site now for a user who is logged in. I've added some of these context debugging blocks at the bottom that list the different contexts that are in use, gives you a lot of information about the conditions and reactions that are operating here. You can drill down and really get a tremendous amount of information about which conditions are active on this particular page.
That's great, Lisa. Thank you, and thank you for a great webinar. I also want to thank all of those of you that stuck with us throughout some audio issues that I realized we were having, and we were frantically trying to remedy those. But certainly if there's anything that you may have missed, feel free to reach out to us. You can also email me directly, as several people have already, at Lori, L-O-R-I, at iFactory.com. We'll also be posting the slides of this webinar on our blog, which is here on this slide, interactivity.ifactory.com. That should go up later today, and then tomorrow you can find the full recording, which maybe if you crank the volume up a little bit, you'll be able to hear in its entirety, and that can be found over on our YouTube channel. So as I mentioned earlier, this was the last webinar in our Drupal series, and we'll be kicking off a new webinar series around usability and functionality for higher ed websites. That will begin in June and run every other week, just as this has. So we will be certain to notify you of that, and you can find out all that information across our social media networks and profiles, and also on our website. So thank you again, Lisa. Thank you to everyone who joined us, and have a great day.